Greetings everybody. Today we're going to discuss running a t-test in Jamovi. So let's open Jamovi. I'm just going to click right here on my icon and here we go. I'm going to make this full screen. So last week we brought our data in by copying and pasting, but this week we're going to go ahead and import it. I'm going to go up here to the top left where these little bars are. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to go to import. It's looking currently at my desktop, which is great because that's where I left my data. It's sitting right here. I have a CSV file called puzzle data. Now I brought it in and it's got the headings already for the variables, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of my A, B, and C column. You can do this one at a time by clicking delete variable, or you can do them all at the same time by highlighting all of them and then deleting the variable. It's going to ask if that's okay, and there you go. Now we are going to look at our data, and let me give you a little background. So this data set is looking at, oh, sorry, my dog is making noise. When aren't they? This data set is looking at a group of participants where you can see we have 29 participants, and they were given instructions on how to complete a puzzle. Half of the group were given written instructions. Half of the group were given video instructions. They completed the puzzle a first time, and then there was a time in between. They then completed the puzzle a second time, and they were timed to complete this puzzle, and this is how many minutes it took to complete the puzzle. So we want to ask ourselves, we can ask a few questions actually. One of the things that I think would be interested in discovering or finding out is whether or not there's a difference in the amount of time it took from the first attempt to the second attempt. In other words, did performing the task once impact how quickly you can do the task a second time? Another question that we might want to ask is whether or not there was a difference in how long it took to complete the task depending upon which type of instructions the subjects were given. So these are the questions that we want to ask, and in order to answer them, we are going to run t-tests. We're running t-tests because if I want to look to see if there's a difference between attempt 1 and attempt 2, I have two scale variables, and I want to know if there's a difference between the two, and there are two of them, not more than two. This puts me in the realm of running a t-test. I have an independent variable of attempt 1 and a dependent variable of attempt 2, both of which are scale, and we're looking to see if there's a difference between the two. So I'm going to, I was going to jump ahead. I always want to jump ahead. I want to run the test, always. This would be a paired samples t-test because it's the same participant that's in condition 1 and condition 2. So it's the same participant in each of them, giving to both conditions. So I'm going to go to t-tests, I'm going to go to paired, and my pair is attempt 1 and attempt 2. It's already starting to give me some output, which I love. I want to be sure to add in, though, the mean difference. I definitely want the effect size, which is our Cohen's d effect size. I want my descriptives, and I want my descriptives plots. Perfect. So this is it. We've run our test. We're going to want to copy and paste these to a Word document. As we can see when we look at this, let's look at the descriptives first. We have attempt 1, there was 29 people. They had an average of 9.57 with a standard deviation of 2.6. Attempt 2 had 29 people. It's the same 29 people, so I hope for sure that number is the same. We have a mean or an average of 8.02 minutes with a standard deviation of 1.89. We can see them here in this plot with the little circle being where the mean is. Awesome. When we look at our inferential statistic or our T statistic or our T-test, we're looking up here, we're looking to see a student's T between attempt 1 and attempt 2. Our actual T value is 4.76. Our degrees of freedom is 28. And our P value is less than 0.001. Now it's our P value that determines whether or not this test is significant. We want to look for a P value that is below our alpha level of 0.05, and 0.001 is most definitely below 0.05, so this is a significant difference. There is a significant difference in the time it took to complete the puzzle on the first attempt and the time it took to complete the puzzle on the second attempt. That mean difference is 1.5 minutes, and our Cohen's d is 0.8. Now, in order to understand what Cohen's d effect size is, you want to be sure to go to the internet, look up Cohen's d effect size, and it will give you an interpretation of what a small effect is, what a medium effect is, and what a large effect is for Cohen's d. And we do this with every inferential test we run, whether we look at an eta squared or a Cohen's d or an r squared. We want to interpret for the reader whether it's a small effect, a medium effect, or a large effect. And we'll get into that more when we're writing it up. So we're going to just right click, copy, and paste. Well, there we go. I am actually going to put my descriptives up above my inferential statistic, just because kind of a nerd like that. I'm going to copy, and I like to do these for sure one at a time. I have found when I don't do them one at a time, sometimes they kind of get stuck in each other, like somehow I always end up dropping it within the box of this one, and then they won't move. And I like to have a little space in between so I can write in between if I would like to, or type in between if I need to. Let me go back to Jamovi. So I do this old school one at a time. I just go from one to the other. It just seems to work better for me. I can then come in here, I can put my headings if I want. In APA format, this would be, well, let's do this. Descriptive statistics for puzzle. Oh, I forget, when I type it gets really loud on the video. Completion time. I'll try to not pound the keys. I can get rid of this extra row now. Okay, so for APA, I want this to be in Times New Roman 12. I want my heading to be bold, and I want my title to be italicized. And there you go. I would do that for each of the, I would do a table for the t-test, and then a figure for my plot. I'm going to make this small. We're going to go back to Jamovi, and let's run our other t-test. So remember, when we looked at our data, there was a couple of questions we could answer. We have now asked and answered whether or not there was a difference between time 1 and time 2, our attempt 1 and attempt 2, and the time it took to complete the puzzle the first time and the time it took to complete the puzzle a second time, showing that the second attempt was in fact quicker. So completing it one time did have a an impact on completing it a second time. But what about the fact that half of the group had written instructions and half of the group had video instructions? Did that cause a difference in how long it took to complete the task of completing the puzzle? So let's look at attempt 1 to see if this caused a difference. We are going to go back to analysis. We're going to run t-test, and this doesn't have to be highlighted, you guys. I just did that for effect. We're going to go to t-test. We're going to run an independent samples t-test. And we're running an independent samples t-test because it's not the same condition. We're looking at the folks that had the written instructions to see if their averages are different than the folks that had the video instructions. So we're going to go to t-test, independent samples. Let's look at attempt 1, and we're going to group it into the 2 groups. So this is what we call the grouping variable, and those 2 groups were written instructions and video instructions. And again, we are running a student's T. We want to know if there's a mean difference. We want to know the effect size. We want the descriptives and the descriptive plots. The last thing that we always run when we're running an independent t-test is we want to check for homogeneity. And this shows that we're looking to see that we didn't violate any assumptions between the variation of the 2 groups, that the 2 groups had similar or equal variances assumed. If we happen to violate this test, we need to not report our t-test. We want to report our Welch's t-test. So for me, the first thing I always do is I want to look at this result. So I come and I look at what I have, and I'm looking for my Levine's, and here it is. Here's my Levine's t-test. If my Levine's t-test, I'm sorry, it's not a Levine's t-test, it's a Levine's test. I'm getting all tongue-tied. If my Levine's test reports a p-value of less than 0.05, that means I have violated an assumption and I need to turn around and run my Welch's instead. If my Levine's is above 0.05, this is 0.5, so it is very, very above 0.05, then we are fine. We can stick with what we've done. We can run our independent samples t-test and report on that. So in this case, we are fine. If you forget whether you have to go above or below, just note that a low p-value, so below 0.05, suggests a violation of assumption. If you violate assumption, that's when you want to run a different test. So ours is good. We can move forward. We have our descriptives, which shows that the video instructions of 15 subjects, it took 10.4 minutes to complete with a standard deviation of 2.48. And for the written instructions, we had 14 subjects and took them 8.6 on average minutes to complete with a standard deviation of 2.5. So we go to our independent samples t-test, and we can see our t statistic is 1.89 with 27 degrees of freedom, and our p-value is 0.070. So at this point we want to think, that's actually above 0.05. This is not a significant impact. We do not have a statistically significant difference between the 2 groups. And that's okay. Remember, everyone's always looking for these crazy, awesome, significant results, but this is an answer. Now we know that the type of instructions really did not have that much of an impact on how long it took for them to complete the puzzle the first time. So we would want to copy everything. And give myself a little bit of room. I can go back and make it better next time. Oh my goodness, I have so many windows open. Always. I'm always getting in trouble by my son. He's like, Mom, you have too many windows open. Oh, well, I know. Okay, so I've got my descriptive statistics. I've got my t-test statistics. Let's add my plot. And because I'm on video, I'm going to pause and I'm going to write up these instructions very quickly for you so you can see how we want to write them. So I will be right back in a second. Okay, I am back. So as you can see, I have written up our results section for the independent t-test. I am going to read to you what I have written. An independent samples t-test was run to see if there was an impact from the type of instructions the subject received prior to completing the puzzle on time it took to complete the puzzle, using attempt 1 as the dependent variable and instruction type as the independent variable. And actually, in our data, this was called group. The results indicated that video instructions group. So apparently I have a few typos in here. The adult results indicated the video instructions group and the written instructions group had no statistically significant difference between the two groups. Now, I can read that sentence and it makes complete grammatical sense. And I can read it without what I have in the parentheses. However, this is the detail and you need to write it so that you can read it without it, but it is here. The video instructions group, we had a count of 15 with a mean of 10.41 and a standard deviation of 2.48. And the written instructions group, and here is their count and their mean and their standard deviation. And then there was no difference between the two. We always use the word significant to let the reader know whether or not something was significant. And we then offer what we call the T statistic. And here's our T statistic. Our T statistic has the degrees of freedom. You'll notice there is no space between the T and this parenthesis for the degrees of freedom. Word will try to correct this for you, but Word is not writing. They write for grammar, they don't write for significant or statistical results. So we write the T, then we write the degrees of freedom. This is our actual T value, and then we write our P value. Now, had this been significant, we would also write our Cohen's d. Since it was not significant, you can have it here. You don't need to. When a t-test is significant, we want to write and interpret our Cohen's d for the reader, or our effect size, and we would always say whether it is small or medium or large effect. Because this wasn't significant, there is not an effect, so we don't need to interpret that. In our last sentence, we will discuss whether or not we reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. So therefore, we fail to reject the null hypothesis that there's no difference between the conditions of the group on time. And you'll notice that I recap what the null hypothesis is. We are failing to reject it. We never accept a null hypothesis. We just simply don't reject it. So this is how we would want to write up an independent samples t-test. I have also got some examples for you to look at that will help you with your future work. But all in all, this is what we want to do when we're running t-tests in Jamovi. And hopefully this will help you. I hope you have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.